my friend, it's Pat Sloan here, and we have number 4 of the Up on the Rooftop. I'm so excited. These are all the main parts. So what do we have? This is, let me pop the picture up because it's a lot easier. Which side? Which side? Here you go, up on the rooftop. Of course, you have the reindeer. You have to have a sled. Reindeer has to have a sled pull, right? That gotta have Santa's sled. So let's look at my fabrics. Okay, this is where there was another piece that I missed ordering enough from the line. So I just went into what I already own and found something that will work. And that's for the actual sled. So let's take a look here. Okay, for the actual sled, I will, of course, this is my, let's all get in the picture. Okay, here, we're all in the picture now. So this is the sled. So I have enough of this for the sled. This is my background. Now I've got the opportunity to have a really pretty floral for the present. And this line has this really pretty floral, and I could do it, I don't want to do the red because that floral doesn't come in red. So I'm good there. But one of these two, and my background is this. And I think the pale pink is, I already did the little snowman, the little penguins rather, for the star with the reindeer. So I think for this one, I'll go with this pink. And then there's I'm going to use the green stripe, I think, for the line, this part down the middle. Well, it'll be like this. It'll be like that for here. And then I think for the top, let's see. Let me move everything down a bit. So for the bow, I think it'll also be green. And, well, I've got the penguins. And, I've got this green too. I think maybe that green. I think that would be good for up there. Unless I go light, But I think I'll go with that darker. Nah, how's that look on there? That looks pretty good. Maybe I'll go ahead and make the bow the light green with the little poinsettias in it. Okay, so that means down here on the star, there's a star. I could do one of the white. I could do this white down here. Let's think about that a second. For this star, I could either go with the white based or the pink. I think I'm going to go with the pink. And then we have the runners. And I do have the gray. I had used the gray for the reindeer. And I think for the runners, I can either use this solid looking. It does have the little dots. So I think you do see it. Or I could use this one for the runners. I think originally I was going to use this one. But I think I'm going to use the more solid one. I think it'll really define the runners and it won't kind of get lost as to what am I looking at. So that's what I'm going to do. So this is it. Okay. I think I will go ahead and make the present. That's what I'll manage for today. I think about fabric direction for the patterns for the present, because this to me is like the horizontal of this pattern, and this is the vertical of this pattern. And so since I'm cutting 2 rectangles for either side of the present, because the stripe is in the middle, I don't want my rectangles to be like this where my flowers are actually sideways. That just, they don't seem like they were drawn to me to be displayed sideways. So I will cut my pieces this way, but I will press it first. To make the bow, you're starting with squares, and each has to be cut on the diagonal. Remember, use a ruler that goes all the way out. Don't go and use your 6.5-inch ruler and try to scoot across. Just grab a ruler that's long enough, and you'll be cutting on the diagonal one way and the diagonal the other way. There you go. And then putting the bow together, it'll be like this. There we go. See, like that. And then you could sew the others and you'll have just an extra block if you want, which I probably will do. And then I'll sew the base and show you. To trim the block properly, use the ruler's line here, and you're going to be using the 4.5-inch points. Don't just lay the ruler and line the 4.5 up over here, because what's going to happen is you will chop off these points, because this is the wrong way. You know, no, no, no. What you want to do is take your angled line here, then find the 4.5 and hit it right at the intersection, and down here the 4.5 at the intersection, which means you trim all 4 sides. So this is on the seam. This line is on the seam. Be sure it's on the seam, and your points are lined up. You know, you got to wiggle a little bit. Okay, get your bifocals right, or your progressos. Now hold it down and do 2 sides. The other 2 are super easy, because now you just rotate your block. Now you put it in the corner, your 4.5 in the corner, where this line goes right on your seam again. Be sure it's on the seam, and these should hit. They do, they hit. And so now you just trim the other 2 sides, and you will not chop off any points, and it will be perfectly done. And the present, so darling. You can see the roses are what I consider right side up. Now if I were to flip them, these are not sewn together, because you'll see in the pattern, but see, like if this was upside down, that rose is upside down, so we don't want that. So I've got it the correct way. Now in the pattern, you actually are sewing like, let me get this in the middle again. You're sewing vertical, so there's strips, background strip here, and then there's the top part of the sled here, and I'm not doing that for today. I will be working on this in September, and probably in September to finish it, for September, October, to finish it for Christmas. I'll get it back out. So isn't that sweet? So sweet. Okay, I have 2 other things for you today. One is we're going to talk about the Jolly Bar sampler, which starts in August, and we'll do like 2 parts, get 2 blocks in August, and then each month there's 2 blocks. It's like every other week. So I want to have you get on board for that. And then I have the last Q&A, which I filmed a little bit ago. You'll see I have long sleeves on, like a heavier top on, but I want to run that. Here is the Jolly Bar 5 sampler. Now, I think I said sampler. I meant Jolly Bar sampler. So many words, right? So many words. So here is Jolly Bar sampler number 5, and well, the Jolly Bar book number 5. And these are patterns all written to use the Jolly Bars that are exclusive to the Fat Quarter Shop. You know, they're Kimberly and Kevin Jolly is their last name, who own the Fat Quarter Shop, and they are half of a layer cake. And I believe for the sampler you need 2 of them, and you need to have background, and there might be something else, but that's to do the sampler. But the cool thing about the sampler is we get to try a bunch of the different blocks from the book. I will show you what fabric I'm using, and I will show you what's inside the book, so you can just see. And we don't use all the patterns in the book. How many are in this one? 20. There's 20 in here. We don't use them all for the sampler, but we get a variety, which is so fun. You get this great layout. So we'll look at my fabric after we take a quick look through the book. There's always just a block image here in the front, which I think is so useful, because you can just easily look down here and see, oh, you know, I was looking for a star. I thought there was a star in this one. I got a layer cake. I want to do something with stars. So you can find things that kind of look like stars. And these are going to give like a chain effect. So I will just show you what's in here. They do this all with the digital layouts. And then there's often a solid little peak at the block in the corner, and it's all spiral. This is the first time I'm opening this one, so I had a little. Okay, so we've got, and they name them. I'm not going to read the names upside down, but Bright Star, and there you can see the block in solids. They do them in the solids. This is very cool. I think this one is pretty darn cool. I like that. I would like to try that one. So, okay, so what is that called? I'm looking. Brookside. There's sometimes a theme, sometimes they're like cake names. There's all kinds of plus signs, more stars. Here's another star with a unit in the middle. So I'm just going to show you a couple of them here. You get a feel for what they look like. And these are like this 59 by 59. And a lot of these in here will just use one layer cake. I mean, actually one Jolly Bar. So you have to take a look. Now, if you have a layer cake of something and want to use it, you can cut it in half or just cut from it what's needed. It gives the variety when you're using a collection, a fabric collection. You get these controlled, scrappy looks. Isn't that cool? That one's very cool. And there's kind of like a pinwheel effect. And here's another star with a lot of little, checkerboard things. There, you can see how that looks. Look at that. Look at these. Putting them together. And yeah, there's kind of like alternating, sort of like a plus and an O, plus and an O, which is really fun. That is so fun. Okay, that's the last one in here. Okay, so now the fabric that I'm using is a bloom. This Corey Yoder's, my friend Corey Yoder's, and I do love her fabric. And there's in here, let me just show you basically, there's the cream, and then there's aqua. So we've got an aqua section, a green section, which is one of my favorite greens there, a peach, and a darker peach, a little bit darker peach. See, there's darker, a kind of taupey gray, a little bit more taupey color, and then a darker gray. So, and the designs, look at the little birds. Look at them, so cute. Little birds, little scatter print, some tone on tone, these kind of little buttons. And then then here's like a little birdhouse. There's a little birdhouse and a plaid. And then there's probably some other, here's a big spray. Yeah, and these are all very sort of classic Corey designs. And then the whole thing kind of repeats through the other colors. And I'll just kind of show you, there's the little birdhouses. And they're not going to all be in all the colors. There's the little birds with peach on the green. That is so gorgeous. So gorgeous. And then the darker peach. And so like if you love one, oh, look at on the green. That would be so pretty for a border. You could get a border or backing for this. There's the peach, the darker peach, and then the taupe. I like this one too. It's kind of the tone on tone like this. This is so pretty. And then you've got it down in the grays. So got the grays. Okay, that is the Jolly Bar sampler quilt along, which will be twice a month through the whole year, I believe. And then we'll finish out. Okay, let's take a look at those last questions I had, those last Q&As. Deborah says, does fabric have a shelf life when stored properly? She was going to donate to a group that makes charity quilts and they only want quilt store quality fabric that's less than 10 years old. Probably the less than 10 years old is because the base fabrics that manufacturers use to print onto has changed dramatically over the years. I'm sure if you go to your stash and find some piece of fabric from 1975 or even 1990 and feel fabric today, they're massively different. The fabric used to be very stiff. Sometimes even when you washed it, it would not get soft. And so apparently you have a group that you're chatting with for donations that has a particular way they want to have their final quilts look and feel. Plus the style is very different from 10 years ago. So, you have to ask them, why they want it that way. The shelf life, I mean, people are using vintage fabric. You do run a chance of fabric rotting and splitting and breaking. A lot of times that happens with like black fabric and things like that. And the older it is, the more chance that those dyes were not real stable in older fabrics and will cause the fabric to become brittle and actually shred. So those are the things to look out for. Kathy says she wants me to retell how I got into quilting. So the short story, which is is that I worked in computers. One of the ladies on my staff, she's one of my staff members. She was a quilt maker, and we talked crafts, and she knew I did crafts and all kinds of other making of things. And so she says to me, she goes, "I think you would learn to quilt." And her name is Gwen. And I said to Gwen, oh, I don't know. I don't think I want to cut things up and sew them back into little pieces. And she goes, oh, no, you're going to love it. So that's basically, I signed up for the 12-week all by hand cardboard template learn to quilt class, and then I fell head over heels. So that's how it happened. And I think there's also Kathy's and maybe some of the others of you. If I had to pick one quilt out of all of them you have quilted, which quilt was my favorite? That's always hard for everybody. What is your favorite? And I know when I used to do podcasts, I would ask people their favorites too. So, and there are probably a few of my older pieces that are with a lot of applique that I really, love. I love my farmer's market. That's one of my favorites just because it has a lot of story, and I really enjoyed putting that together. And there's maybe a few others that I could put on that list. And we'll do two more. Kathy says, I notice you never seem to do flying geese, but you two have square triangles. Well, I actually do flying geese, but I prefer writing the directions for half square triangles. There's no waste. When you do half square triangles, there's zero waste. Maybe a teeny little bit of trimming. When you do flying geese, I know there's lots of methods for flying geese, but when you write a pattern as a designer, you pick the most basic method usually, so that everybody can do it. And so there's waste. So that's why. And the last one, let's see, one more, hold on. Let me see if I can get from the fun stuff. There weren't as many fun questions as I told you. Okay, and I did a bunch of them the other day, so this is kind of the last fun question that I had. Trina says, do you have a favorite dinner that you prepare when I'm quilting? No. But it would be nice if I did. For those of you who do have a favorite dinner when you're quilting, leave that in the comments so everybody can have an idea, or go over to my fireside chat and put the recipe. It's always a good thing. Remember, I do this as a business. By the time evening comes, I'm not quilting. I'm doing other things to let my brain relax. I mean, for a lot of years, I did have to do things in the evening because I would be leaving to go out of town to teach or something like that. But in the last few years, I don't have to do that anymore. I can turn off the quilting at dinner time and not deal with it anymore. So it's a daytime thing for me. All right. So I have one more page of questions for another day. Thank you so much for the questions over all the last 2 months, where I've just kind of, doled them out. Split a few of them up that I did long, like today's, and so that we weren't so long in one session. So they were so super fun to answer, and I hope that you are enjoying the Up on the Rooftop, the mystery from the Fat Quarter Shop, Christmas in July, and I can't wait to see yours. And I will work on mine later and finish them up, and that's the way it goes this round. So I love you. Mwah. Thank you for being here in the Sloan Zone. I will see you online.